When you're studying the play, particularly if you're a senior high school student, markers will expect you to support your discussion of Romeo and Juliet's themes with detailed textual analysis. This first lesson will unpack the most famous and significant quotes uttered by the main characters, Romeo and Juliet, while the second lesson will go through quotes spoken by the play's other characters. The first 5 quotes chart Romeo's character arc, and his experience of true love transforms him, but ultimately leads to his death. Quote 1, Act 1, Scene 1. Why then, O brawling love, O loving hate, O anything of nothing first create, O heavy lightness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos of well-seeming forms, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health. Before Romeo meets Juliet, he is obsessed with Rosaline. You will remember from our videos on context and gender that love poetry in Shakespeare's day was inspired by the Italian poet Petrarch. Petrarch wrote in the style of courtly love, where men would dramatically declare their love for women from afar, using super flowery language. Shakespeare is parodying, or making fun of, this style of poetry. Notice that Romeo doesn't actually mention Rosaline herself. He is infatuated with the concept of love. He spouts off a list of oxymorons, contradictory phrases, as if he is making a profound observation about the nature of love. For example, love is heavy and serious, but it is also lightness and vanity, which means the opposite of serious. Love is bright and afire, symbolising joy and passion, but it is also smoke and cold, symbolising sad loneliness, especially as Rosaline does not love Romeo back. But all these dramatic exclamations just show how immature Romeo is. He hasn't experienced true love yet. Quote 2, Act 1, Scene 5. If I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, the gentle fine is this. My lips, 2 blushing pilgrims, ready stand to smooth that rough touch with a tender kiss. The traditional form for love poetry, popularised by Petrarch, was a sonnet, a 14-line poem with a strict rhyme scheme. In Petrarch's poems, the guy got to do all the talking and the girl had to listen appreciatively. But when Romeo and Juliet meet, they share a sonnet, speaking in alternation. What a contrast to Romeo's infatuation with Rosaline, who friend-zoned him and doesn't even appear on stage. These are Romeo's first words to Juliet. Look at all the religious language. He sees Juliet as a metaphorical, holy shrine, showing her absolute perfection. Then he describes his lips as pilgrims. Pilgrims were people who would travel a long way to visit religious sites. It is as if he has travelled from afar to worship Juliet's perfection and kiss her hand. A few lines after this quote, at the end of the 14-line sonnet, Romeo and Juliet share their first kiss, which is described metaphorically as a prayer. All this shows the spiritual connection that the two immediately share. There's something pretty special about their love. Quote 3, Act 2, Scene 2. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Oh, speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night, being o'er my head as is a winged messenger of heaven. Late that night, after the party, Romeo sneaks into Juliet's backyard. Looking up, he sees her in the window and utters these words, calling Juliet a light and the sun. These metaphors show the joy that Juliet gives him. She lights up his world. The image of dawn breaking also symbolises a new beginning for Romeo, as he moves away from the sad darkness of his life without Juliet. As you read the play, pay attention. Romeo is constantly using light imagery in reference to Juliet. Also, Romeo doesn't just like her because she is pretty. He wants to listen to her and connect with her, as shown in the imperative or command, "Oh, speak again." Romeo's attitude is remarkable, considering he lived in a world where women were expected to be quiet and just listen to the men. Romeo says she is "o'er my head," where the staging symbolises his willingness to submit to her rather than claim power over her. So, through Romeo, Shakespeare is challenging the traditional gender roles in romantic relationships. And check it out, more religious language. He metaphorically calls her a bright angel, then repeats himself in a simile, comparing her again to a winged messenger of heaven. Again, we are reminded of the extraordinary spiritual connection between Romeo and Juliet. Quote 4, Act 3, Scene 1. "O sweet Juliet, thy beauty hath made me effeminate, and in my temper softened valour's steel. Away to heaven, respective lenity, and fire-eyed fury be my conduct now." Up to this point, love for Juliet has filled him with such joy and peace that he has stayed clear of the Montague-Capulet conflict. But then Tybalt kills Mercutio, and Romeo flips out, worried that love has made him too peaceful. Her beauty has metaphorically softened valour's steel, meaning that she has weakened his strong sense of honour. In response, he gives this imperative: "Away to heaven, respective lenity." In other words, he orders his own gentleness to get lost. Instead, he wants to be guided by fire-eyed fury, personifying anger by giving it human characteristics as if it were a blazing monster. The contrast between gentle lenity and raging fury illustrates how quickly Romeo changes attitude, fired by a sense of masculine pride and, of course, grief at Mercutio's death. He proceeds to slay Tybalt, which, as we all know, does not end well. Quote 5, Act 5, Scene 1. "Let me have a dram of poison, such soon speeding gear as will disperse itself through all the veins, as violently as hasty powder fired doth hurry from the fatal cannon's womb." Romeo is in exile in Mantua, thanks to his rash decision to kill Tybalt. Now he has just received the terrible news that Juliet has apparently died. He springs into action, looking for an apothecary, chemist, to sell him some poison. His imperative, "Let me have a dram of poison," shows his decisiveness. He has made up his mind to die, rather than live a life without Juliet. And he is not afraid at all to imagine death, painting the gruesome image of poison spreading through all the veins. Above all, he wants the poison to work as fast as hasty powder from the fatal cannon's womb. This simile shows that he wants the poison to work as quickly as firing a cannonball. The image of a dangerous explosion suggests the danger of Romeo's rash attitude here. He hasn't learned his lesson. Remember the last time he made an emotional, on-the-spot decision? He killed Tybalt and got himself exiled. The scene is full of dramatic irony, which is where the audience knows something the characters don't. We know that Juliet is still alive and that a message from the friar is on its way explaining the situation. So we are horrified at how impulsive Romeo is behaving. For quotes about Romeo's actual death, check out our video on death and mortality in the play. The next 5 quotes are uttered by Juliet and explore her character arc. Quote 6, Act 1, Scene 3. Enter Juliet. "How now, who calls?" "Madam, I am here. What is your will?" Remember our videos on context and gender? Shakespeare lived in a patriarchal world, which means that men were strong and powerful, while women were expected to be quiet and obedient. In the family unit, the man was the head of the house. Good daughters kept silent and did whatever they were told. Juliet follows this role perfectly. These are her first words in the play. In contrast to Romeo, who makes long, sappy speeches about Rosaline, Juliet speaks in short, simple sentences. She responds immediately to the nurse's call, demonstrating her obedience. Her language is respectful and formal. She calls her mother Madam and immediately asks how she can obey. People disagree as to whether Juliet is submissive to her parents at the beginning of the play. Maybe she is just pretending. But in any case, she is definitely appearing to be a perfect daughter. It's a bit boring, really. But just wait. Meeting Romeo will transform and embolden her. Quote 7, Act 2, Scene 2. Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Oh, be some other name. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. After the party, Juliet reflects on meeting Romeo. She cries in an emotive exclamation, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo!" Then asks a frustrated rhetorical question. Wherefore art thou Romeo? Remember, a rhetorical question doesn't expect an answer. She is just expressing her emotions. The repetition of Romeo reminds the audience of the family conflict that underlies their situation. Romeo's identity as a Montague is a serious barrier to their love. The imperative, "Oh, be some other name," shows Juliet's determination to overcome this obstacle. She wishes Romeo's identity as a Montague doesn't have to define him or their relationship. She asks another reflective rhetorical question. What's in a name? She compares his name to the word rose. If the same flower went by a different name, it would still smell as sweet. Similarly, if Romeo had a different name, he would still be the same person and she would love him just as much. But despite Juliet's wishful thinking, Romeo can never separate himself from his Montague identity. Their love must remain forbidden and a secret, and is fated to end in death. Poor Juliet. Quote 8, Act 3, Scene 2. Gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds, towards Phoebus' lodging. Such a waggoner as Phaethon would whip you to the west and bring in cloudy night immediately. In Act 3, Scene 2, Juliet gives a long soliloquy conveying her love for Romeo and her impatience for their wedding night. Remember, a soliloquy is where a character shares their inmost thoughts with the audience. In our video on gender, we talked about how this soliloquy is exciting because Shakespeare gives a woman the opportunity to discuss her own feelings and desires, rather than letting Romeo do all the talking. This rich poetry is a sharp contrast to Juliet's simple, submissive speech earlier. She opens with an allusion or reference to a Greek myth. Background: Phoebus was the god of the sun, which was thought to be a chariot he would drive across the sky every day. Juliet is apostrophizing or addressing these mythical horses, ordering them to gallop onwards towards night. In other words, she wishes the sun would hurry up and set so she can be with Romeo that night. But did you notice the allusion to Phaethon? According to the myth, Phaethon was Phoebus' son who borrowed the sun chariot for a day. But he drove wildly and recklessly as he couldn't control the blazing sun horses. The sun careened close to the earth, scorching it with fire. It was so dangerous that the god Jupiter had to strike Phaethon down with a bolt of lightning. Unknowingly, Juliet is foreshadowing or hinting at her own downfall. The reckless, hasty relationship between Romeo and Juliet is glorious like the sun, but will end in disaster. Quote 9, Act 4, Scene 2. I have learned me to repent the sin of disobedient opposition and beg your pardon. Pardon, I beseech you. Henceforward I am ever ruled by you. Here Juliet agrees to obey her father and marry Paris. She uses religious language to describe her previous disobedience as sin and promises that she has learned to repent. The repetition of pardon and the desperate exclamation, I beseech you, makes it seem that Juliet has genuinely changed her mind and is ready to obey her father. She is conforming to her expected gender role. But hang on a second. Didn't we just analyse Juliet's empowered, passionate soliloquy? Why is she being so submissive again? This is part of the friar's plan to reunite the lovers. Juliet agrees to marry Paris, then takes a potion that will make her seem dead. The Capulets will take her to the family tomb where Romeo is supposed to meet her. So this conversation with her father is full of dramatic irony. Juliet is lying through her teeth. Her love for Romeo has surpassed her duty towards her father. Quote 10, Act 5, Scene 3. O churl, drunk all, and left no friendly drop to help me after, I will kiss thy lips. Haply some poison yet doth hang on them to make dye with a restorative. Juliet wakes from her drug-induced slumber and sees Romeo, dead, beside her, a cup of poison in his hand. She insults him in the exclamation, "Oh, churl!" But she is not angry because he took his own life. Rather, she is angry that he didn't leave enough poison for her too. She personifies poison as friendly and, ironically, describes it as a restorative, that is, a healing medicine, the exact opposite of poison. Why is she using such positive language? Tragically, Juliet sees a life without Romeo as not worth living. The stage directions show her attempting to kiss poison from Romeo's lips. She wants to die through a symbol of love, because being reunited with Romeo is the only joy left to her now. To seal the deal, she then stabs herself. For more analysis of Juliet's actual death, check out our video on death and mortality in the play. We hope you enjoyed this Schooling Online production. For more easy lessons on Romeo and Juliet, check out our second quotes analysis video, analysing more key quotes in Romeo and Juliet.